Ben, let's get you in the middle. So I was just saying to Johnny there, the position you're in, and it's a product of a lot of hard work to get you there, is that people will always want to fight you. And it's a good position to be in. But at the same time, it does seem to irritate you slightly that somebody could just gate-crash a press conference and get a fight with you.
Well, watching boxing, I thought you worked your way through the ranks, beat the people you're supposed to beat, get the belts, where, as of now, today's day and age, is walk through them doors, do that, and you get a fight. And like I said up there, I'll fight him. Good record, good kid. But I'm going to make an example to not start doing that, because if I do that, they'll all start doing it. We'll have about 30 of them queuing up.
And Ben, that's what I kind of sense. This guy got on your skin only for that reason at all.
Of course,
that he actually, you've got to be dealing with this kind of stuff. That's why he said this will never happen again.
You know what? Fair play to him. He came from Africa. This is his opportunity. He's fighting for himself, his family. I understand it and I appreciate it. But from a boxer like me who's worked from 7 years old and worked through the rankings, should I just throw that out the window and just start running into press conferences? And that's what I'm going to show. We do things properly. You go through the ranks and there's levels for a reason.
Did Johnny Nelson say that Ben Whitaker was a free agent? I thought he had one fight left on the contract. Ben spoke about he has to remind himself that the promoters work for the boxer. And there's a big emphasis on these fighters taking control of their careers and becoming free agents. And it's all good. But what does that mean, though? What does it really encompass? What are you paying for if you do sign a multiple fight deal or free 4 or 5 year deal with a promoter? What are you paying for? Are the questions. Because right now, you're saying the promoters work for you. Well, you're working for Ezra Aranyenka, the Nigerian. 12 fights, 10 inside the distance, no losses, no draws. Haven't seen him fight. I'll do a search and see if I can see anything on him. Now, Ezra interrupted Ben Whitaker at the Fabio Wardley Frazier Clark press conference when Ben was talking. Ezra had a lot to say, and it looks like the goading, as Andy Clark and Johnny Nelson were referring to, got under Ben Whitaker's skin. So that means basically Ben Whitaker's went out there, won an Olympic silver medal, to get Sky Sports to really pay out of pocket to obtain his services. And now Ben is giving this unknown Nigerian this opportunity for what exactly? Ben's had 6 fights in, 2-3 years. The only complaint that I have about his career, it should be about 12 fights. He's fighting about the right level of opposition. Just needs to fight more frequently. That's all. That's the only thing that needs to be done. At this stage, he's 26, 7-0 with 5 inside the distance. Now, Ben will be the favourite, and it's not a case of he shouldn't take the fight because he could lose necessarily. It's not really my point here. My point is, who's the matchmaker at Boxer, at Sky? Who's the matchmaker? That's what you're paying for. Did Ben Shalom offer Ben Whitaker his opponent? I doubt it very much. Go look at Anthony Yard's career. How many opponents called out Anthony Yard when they had 7 fights and got the fight? None. He was still fighting opponents with losing records. I mean, Aaron Yaker, he can talk good. Yeah, he can talk. He got past security somehow, and he can talk. But so what? His resume consists of a load of fighters with losing records. This ain't about taking a fight that, oh, you might lose because he's got some good record. It's not about that. It's about you, like you're saying, being in control of your career. That means when random light heavyweight calls you out, you don't necessarily bite the bait unless he's got something for you at this stage here. Because when Ben gets the British, Commonwealth, European, and then world title honours, if he gets there, then you'll have to take on all comers, whether they get under your skin or not. Because when you get to that level there, you have to fight for vacant belts, you'll be mandated, and if you're a champ, you'll have to defend against whoever, regardless if they get under your skin or not. And you'll have plenty of time to exercise your ego. Now, if Ben wins this fight here, which he should do, someone needs to sit him down and say, look, we have to either work to a plan or what are we doing here? And Ben is probably responding to a lot of the critics who don't like his showboating. Who are saying, oh, well, you can do that against that level of opposition, but what about when you step up, you won't be able to do that? Or they're saying you're disrespecting your opponents. Ezra, he was saying that. Callum Smith, he's been saying that. Ben is probably responding to that, saying, look, I'm taking on this guy who's called me out. Because perhaps he might want his critics to like him. Tyson Fury made some very unpopular decisions, not fighting David Price for the British title, and a host of other fights he didn't take early in his career before titles became an issue. I'm always pulling up receipts. Hey, he didn't take that fight, he didn't take that fight. But who's fighting for Undisputed on May the 18th? Ultimately, some of the decisions are going to be unpopular. And it's all about the ends justifying the means. If the detractors don't like the showboating or don't like the opponents, Ben needs to develop thick skin. Unless his coach or the matchmaker wants him to take that fight, he himself shouldn't be taking this decision into his own hands, in my opinion. If Ben beats this Nigerian kid, does he think his detractors are just going to go away? No, they're not going to go away. They're going to say you fought nobody. That's why you won. That's all they're going to do. You know, I would love to sit down and have a drink with Frank Warren, no cameras, and ask him, what do you think of what Ben Whitaker's doing? And I have a rough idea what he's going to say. Before you make these moves, because I'm a free agent, a boss, you need to consult cooler, older, more experienced heads who haven't necessarily boxed either. Yeah? Let me repeat. This isn't, he shouldn't take it because he might lose. No. You fight under your own schedule until you're put under the constraints of holding championship belts, where you have to defend against mandatories and make voluntaries against top 10 opponents, whether that's domestic or world level. Nobody in the media or no fans were saying Ben Whitaker needed to fight this guy. Nobody was saying that. Who was saying that? Your ego, your complex.
It's your complex that rips and wrecks your confidence, creates paranoias inside of your mind when you rhyme.
You gotta fight and make decisions with your brain, and when need be, with your ego. You could have saved this fight for your 10th fight, perhaps, Commonwealth title, but it all depends what the schedule is. It all depends what the plan is. Like, Ben Shalom is a kid. He's a kid. The way Ben Whitaker's been speaking about Sky, how they set him up for this Ezra to get in the press conference, I don't think Ben can really put his foot down and have much say in the opponent picking process. And I'm going to repeat it again because people don't listen very well. They don't hear very well. Yeah? This isn't, we're trying to keep this guy away from tough opponents, because I don't know how tough Ezra is. This ain't a matter of that. I'm saying it's not ideal for a 26-year-old with 7 fights to be picking his opponents because he got under his skin. Angelo Dundee wouldn't allow Sugar Ray Leonard to pick his opponents. That's why is Ben Whitaker being able to do that? These kids in boxing these days, they think they invented the wheel. Now, he's split with Sugar Hill. And if the new coach comes out and says, yeah, we're targeting this guy because we think it's the next step that Ben needs to take, and there's a solid explanation of why they're taking it, not, oh, well, he rushed the press conference and he got under everyone's skin. But if there's a measured answer why they're taking it, then okay, I'll say no problem. And you'll be shocked how these things go wrong. Not necessarily against Ezra Eriyenka, but when you let these young kids let their ego take front stage when they're paying out of their purses for expertise in terms of matchmaking and guidance, this shit can go wrong. When the export Nigerian or West African fighters, for that matter, make their way to America or Britain, it's a mixed bag. And when I say Nigerian, I'm talking about those born on the soil. And there's not much film footage of these guys, so we don't know if we're getting Dick Tiger or Richard Latte, regardless of what the record is. Maybe Ben Shalom don't care, because apparently the rumours are Ben Whitaker might have 1 fight left and he might jet into the welcoming arms of Matchroom. Let me repeat, this is not about preserving unbeaten records and trying to stay unbeaten and do some bootleg Floyd Mayweather job. But 2 of the modern great British fighters, Nassim Hamed and Joe Calzaghe, both unified world champions, made a lot of money, and they both left the game unbeaten. Who guided their careers to world titles? Frank Warren. Joe was quite an arrogant fighter, not in terms of his say mad stuff, but when he was in the ring he was very arrogant, very talented boxer, extremely talented. Go watch Joe Calzaghe when he didn't have brittle hands, when he was beating up Stephen Wilson and Mark Delaney. Nassim was extremely arrogant, and he probably worked with Ernie Fossey, matchmaking, guiding, and then later it was Dean Powell. Them days you had these figures in Britain who could do it all. Matchmake, train, coach, second. And it doesn't always go right. Remember Khan crashed against Bradis Prescott? Like, when Frank did that one, I was like, what the fuck, Frank? You know what I mean? Because I remember picking up the boxing news. I remember looking at the press photo, and we all knew Khan's chin was a little vulnerable by this stage. And I'm looking at this guy's record. No defeats, all knockouts, and he had a longer reach than Khan. I'm thinking, what the fuck's going on here? He must be shit. And they turned Khan over. Sometimes it goes wrong. And even then, it was Khan's new trainer, Jorge Rubio, who suggested Khan fight this guy. And Frank must have said, okay, well, we'll let it go. Nah. Frank Warren had to take responsibility ultimately, because they were training for a southpaw, I believe. Khan was coming off Ramadan. Rubio said, pull Khan out, pull him out, because if he hasn't been eating well, Brady's is not the ideal opponent to take if you're leaving anything to chance. But Warren and Khan, they probably didn't want to shut down the show, and ultimately he took an L. Frank took responsibility because he knows he shouldn't have gave the responsibility to this new guy to pick the opponent. He had to take responsibility. But Frank has produced world champions from their first fight to that belt. He's done that. Had that blip with Amir Khan along the way, but him included. And even then, that Bradis-Prescott fight was for a belt. This fight's not for a belt. It's for Ben Whitaker's ego. Go buy a new sports jacket or a car or make a rap song and let who's paid to matchmake do that. Paraphrasing the gist of what Richard Riakporhe said to set it off, he said, this will be the first world championship fight on boxing between two domestic fighters at Crystal Palace. Like, you know, he's trying to say the fight is setting precedents, like world title fight at Crystal Palace, two domestic fighters. Chris Billiam Smith attempted to correct him and said, him and Lawrence Okoli was a domestic fight at Bournemouth. And then Richard said, yeah, I said domestic fight, including myself. Wait your turn to speak. And Billiam Smith awkwardly backed out of the exchange. Didn't really look comfortable there, Billiam Smith, to me. Like, Richard won these exchanges for whatever it will mean when they fight. He pointed out that Chris hasn't really improved from their first fight, which Richard won on points. It was a grueling fight, very tough fight. And Richard said, look at his last fight against Masternak, how much he was getting hit. Chris is deteriorating. He's worse for wear for all the punches he's taking. Shane keeps telling him to move his head, move his head, move his head, and he's getting banged up. And Richard said it very calm, like, you know, he studied him alongside Angel Hernandez, and they know all the punches that Chris is susceptible to. And Chris tried to rebuttal and say, it's not as bad as people are saying. I'm not taking the full impact of the punches. And when I'm getting hit, they're not hurting like people think they're hurting. And I don't want to try and describe what he himself is experiencing because he's taking the punches. But I've seen a few fights recently where Chris has took flush punches and he wasn't riding them. The Masternak fight for one. Isaac Chamberlain hurt him a couple of times. There was a fight, I believe, before Isaac Chamberlain, which was supposed to be a routine fight where he got rocked. And he's getting hit an awful lot. But if Shane McGuigan didn't believe Chris could beat Richard Riakporhe at Selhurst Park, Richard's hometown, then they won't be taking this fight. I mean, Shane and Chris could have negotiated to perhaps get the fight in a more neutral location. I mean, Chris is the champion. I think Chris is just awkward. Not a great talker. When I say talker, he can talk very well, articulately. He's a well-spoken lad, sounds educated, but he's not a smack talker. Doesn't really come across like a boxer. Whatever that means, sounds like I'm painting some kind of stereotype. I mean, Richard is well-spoken, articulate, sounds educated. But Richard's got that South London rude boy swag, innit? You know what I mean? But he's confident, he's up for it, and he would love to put Riakporhe alongside some good scalps in Isaac Chamberlain and Lawrence Okoli on his resume. Also avenge that earlier loss to Riakporhe, the only loss of his career. I want to say Richard Riakporhe wins, just based on how much Chris is getting hit recently. But I'm looking forward to it. Chantel Cameron's been released by Matchroom. Eddie Hearn, there's no beef, but they always felt that Cameron was never satisfied with what they did for her. Like, they made that tournament at 140 with all the title holders. It was especially designed for Cameron. 2 fights with Katie Taylor. She's been champion at a couple of weights, I believe, at Matchroom. She's had some good fights. There was the situation with Ellie Scottney and Shane McGuigan where Ellie Scottney lost her title opportunity because Cameron couldn't stand being around Shane. They had to rearrange Ellie Scottney's title fight. She complained that Matchroom was showing favouritism towards Katie Taylor, even though she got the decision in the first fight, complained after she lost the rematch, and she's complaining she's not getting the rubber match. I don't think Matchroom can force Katie Taylor into the ring. She's opting to fight Amanda Serrano on the Tyson-Jake Paul card, and enough is enough, and they've released Chantel Cameron. A lot of people are tipping her to head over to Boxer. I thought it might have been announced on the Richard Riakporhe, Billiam Smith press conference, but we'll see. She's a very impulsive woman, very good fighter though, but very impulsive. And it looks like Matchroom don't want the headache of promoting her no more. Okay, news just in. Chantel Cameron has signed with Queensbury. Not much of a surprise because, you know, if Ben Shalom didn't make an offer, where else is there to go? Do I believe Frank, who's actually partnered up with Eddie in Saudi Arabia, gives Chantel that attention that she wanted from Eddie? When Frank's track record in women's boxing, I mean, we can go back to Jane Couch and Jane's lawsuit on the British Boxing Board of Control and Frank's opinions on women's boxing, which have changed, obviously, as time has went by. We'll see. Like Eddie, he said it was amicable. There was no bad blood between him and Chantel, but I'm sure when Chantel has an interview and she's asked about the split, she won't be as gracious. Wow. You hear the passive-aggressive parting shot. I wasn't one of his favourites.
All right, guys, we're here with Ryan Garcia. Ryan, obviously a very trying and I'm sure a very frustrating week for you. Can you tell us your reaction to the news that came out earlier this week?
You know, straight bullshit. It's a con job. Everybody knows Victor Conte is a piece of shit. We all know it. He literally helped design fucking VADA. This is fucking bullshit. All of a sudden, I test positive. This is straight bullshit. Bro, how the heck do I go months and months not testing positive for nothing, then on the last day, the day before and the day after I'm positive? Where the... Bro, this is some A1 bullshit. I don't even know how this is possible. But again, I'm not going to shy away from no question. Ask me any question.
Well, just curious, what is the process now, right?
Because I asked for the B sample already. I got professionals looking over all my supplements to see if it was tainted.
Victor Conte, who works with Caleb actually, with that snack product, has become a target in Ryan's desperate attempt to clear his name. Now, Devin Haney obviously uses Victor Conte and snack products. But Victor's worked with a lot of fighters who've lost fights, and unless you can pull up the receipts, there's no record of him interfering with the opponent's PED test. So why Devin? And what would the motive be exactly? Ryan's dad, he's led the charge with all this as well. If there's any credence in their claims, they should be letting the legal people prove their case against VADA and Victor Conte. You know, Victor Conte, he's denying Ryan's claims. He's become a bit of a mark, hasn't he? He's an easy target for someone like Ryan to use to try and exonerate themselves from the charges. Not only have you got the Balco scandal against him, he's been to jail for 4 months for his indiscretions with performance-enhancing drugs.
Margaret Goodman is the head of VADA, and she is a person that wants to dot all the I's and cross all the T's, and we've been working collectively on this. Of course, my primary role will be to herd athletes to her. Yeah. But she's talking with people very high up in the world of anti-doping associated with WADA people in terms of the testing as well as the doping control officers. And we're going to have some sponsorships for elite athletes. And
he clearly says Margaret Goodman, the president of VADA, she dots the I's and crosses the T's. And what does he mean by that? Like, if he needs something approved, she's the boss. That's the language you use when you're working for someone. They cross the I's and they dot the T's and they sign the checks and they veto and they approve. And then he says his primary role, primary is plural, roles, meaning he had a few jobs or tasks, duties he was undertaking at VADA. There's no way out. But his primary role was getting athletes to get tested by VADA. There's evidence that any two-bit lawyer could make a good case to say, yes, you did work at VADA. Ryan's a desperate man. He knows what he did, but he's found himself a mark. who's just as untrustworthy as he is. And there's Victor Conte saying he's not going to sue Ryan because it's too expensive. No, you're not going to sue Ryan because the receipts are against you. Torn meniscus. That's located in the knee has put Artur Beterbiev out of the Dimitri Bivol fight on June the 1st. The Matchroom versus Queensbury card goes ahead. Now, that's a lot of pullouts through injury throughout his career. I'm sure some of the pullouts have been legit injuries, but I'll leave that there. I wonder if Bivol still wants to fight. There's enough time to get a substitute opponent so he can get a fight. Craig Richards was saying he could beat Bivol now. He could step in if Matchroom could find a replacement light heavyweight to fight Willie Hutchinson. I think Callum Smith is getting married around that time, so probably write that off. It's a bad omen for May the 18th. I don't think that fight's going to get over the line on that date. And with that,
I'm gone. Ghost, peace, sayonara.